Thank you. Unit to come and to give us the lead as far as the conferment of the award of 7-7 is concerned. Then after that, we will continue the ceremony. But meanwhile, Mrs. Basman, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. Welcome. Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we have the honor to present you the ceremony of nomination of Prince 777 as UNESCO Artist for Peace. The Director General of UNESCO, Mr. Mansoura, will deliver his nomination speech.
Mr. President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Excellencies, Prince 777, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to participate in this ceremony to mark the designation of Prince 777 as UNESCO Artist for Peace. I'm pleased that the ceremony is taking place today on Africa Day, for it pays tribute to the lead role that has been played by this distinguished Nigerian artist, not only in his country, but throughout the African continent. It is also appropriate that the ceremony should take place in the presence of His Excellency President OBASANJO, whose support for the candidature of Prince 777 was instrumental in ensuring its success. Prince 777 was born in 1944 in Ogidi, Iliku, Nigeria. Art, especially painting and dancing, was an essential part of his life from an early age. His career began in the workshops conducted by Uli and Georgina Bayer in Oshobo, Western Nigeria in the 1960s, and he eventually emerged as the most successful representative of the Oshobo School of Painting. Now, one of Nigeria's most famous artists, Prince 777, is a painter whose works can be found in major public and private collections around the world. While the term multimedia artist seeks to capture the range and diversity of his accomplishment, it does not do justice to his multi-talented excellence. He is an African Renaissance man, an artist who is at home in many different art forms and whose whole life is channeled through various modes of cultural expression. Prince 777 is himself a Yoruba and received the title of chief in 1974. His art, full of strong symbolism, draws upon folk traditions but in dynamic combination with modern themes. He is an artist of our times and has made a major contribution to how Africans in particular understand themselves and their place in this fast-changing world. As UNESCO Artist for Peace, Prince 777 will join the family of artists who have attained excellence on the international scene and who, through their fame and celebrity status, ensure that message of peace and international understanding as well as cultural diversity is heard and promoted in all corners of the world. You will join as UNESCO Artists for Peace other distinguished persons such as Madame Gatama, Miyako Yoshida, Roger Bashich, Patricia Velasquez, Scott Mamadi, and Mount and Dibango, who all put their fame and influence at the service of UNESCO's ideals and objectives. I'm particularly delighted that Prince 277's designation as UNESCO Artist for Peace will enable him to focus on the promotion of dialogue and understanding among peoples, especially within Africa and between Africa and other regions. Acquiring better knowledge of each other is at the heart of promoting mutual understanding, respect, and tolerance. As someone whose work traverses many forms of artistic expression and creativity, he is ideally suited, I believe, to building bridges between cultures and peoples. I therefore look forward with anticipation to his special and innovative artistic contribution to UNESCO's activities in support of the dialogue among peoples, especially in Africa. I thus have the honor, Prince 77, to designate you officially as UNESCO Artist for Peace and present you with your diploma. Let me read the diploma. Prince 277 is hereby designated UNESCO Artist for Peace in recognition of his artistic contribution to the promotion of dialogue, tolerance, and understanding among peoples, particularly in Africa and its diaspora, and for his attachment to the ideals and aims of the organization.
My great leader, the President of Federal Republic of Nigeria, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is almost humility that I receive this great honor bestowed on me today. It is even more gratifying for me because it has been done on the auspicious occasion of African Day. In all my works as an artist, I've always strived not only for creativity, excellence, but also to use my works for the purpose of bringing mutual understanding, tolerance, unity, and peace to all people of the world. Of men and race, color, and spiritual calling. It is indeed my sincere belief that we all belong to one common human family, with the unique distinction of being able to dialogue, that which makes us different from all our lower animals. I wish to express my sincere appreciation to the Director General of UNESCO and all the staff of UNESCO for their unitary effort towards constructing peace in the hearts of all men. My wholesome gratitude also go again to the Chairman of African Union. I will call him my father, my able leader, one of the greatest men of our time, in person of General Chief OBASANJO, GCFR, whom I'm proud to call my father, my president, and president of all beautiful people of the world coming from after us. To you all, I say thank you. Merci beaucoup. Monsieur Gajos, Esheknoni, Kashipolo.
Mr. President, Mr. Director General, governors, ministers, ambassadors, permanent delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to call upon His Excellency Mr. Wilfried Emula, the Ambassador Permanent Delegate of Namibia and President of the African Group in UNESCO, to take the floor. Excellency.
Thank you. Your Excellency, Chief Olusegun OBASANJO, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the AU, and your delegation of ministers and officials, Director General of UNESCO, Mr. Koichiro Matsura, Chairman of the General Conference, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors to the French Republic and permanent delegates to UNESCO, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am most humbled to be accorded this opportunity as chairperson of the Africa Group at UNESCO to say a few words at this memorable occasion of honoring His Excellency's visit to UNESCO, the House for Culture, Education, Peace, and Science and Technology, especially on this significant Africa Day. With UNESCO's commitment to the achievement of these noble objectives, I have no doubt in my mind that together we will be able to overcome the challenges that come our way. UNESCO and the people of Africa have a long-standing relationship, and the zeal with which the organization is working to augment Africa's standing in the areas of culture, science and education under the able leadership of its Directors General serves as testimony to that relationship. As such, we have no doubt that UNESCO will help to achieve the set Millennium and Education for All goals in its fields of competence. We in the African Group, while paying gratitude, will continue to work with UNESCO to meet its set commitments towards the betterment of the African situation, especially in the areas of teachers' training, particularly in science and mathematics, culture, as well as the impetus to reduce poverty by means of self-benefit trust funds. Africa, as other sub-regions affected, is also deeply indebted to UNESCO for its efforts towards reducing HIV/AIDS prevalence, which cuts across all sectors of society through education, and can only hope that our and UNESCO's efforts in that area will bear fruit. Mr. President, while we are all aware that the road is long and bumpy, UNESCO's courageous and bold steps to achieve the goals of education for all by the year 2015 are truly commendable. It should be mentioned, however, that countries, especially those from the developing world, may not achieve these goals due to a lack of human, financial, material, and technical means. Therefore, Africa calls upon the organization to keep the momentum and its focus on the continent, backed up by its budget. Certainly, UNESCO's efforts in improving the continent's position in its areas of competence are innumerable. The Young Professionals Program is a boost to Africa's youth, and we are hopeful that UNESCO would reconsider its intake of young people from Africa from the current 10 to its original 20 in the near future. We are appreciative and supportive of the fact, for the first time, that the next World Heritage Committee meeting is going to be held on the African continent in July this year. The process of listing of sites on the World Heritage List has become quite cumbersome for those member states that are lacking the necessary financial means and skills to prepare and complete the required dossiers. Countries, especially those in sub-Saharan Africa, are finding this weighty, and UNESCO's assistance in providing experts to speed up the process would go a long way in creating a balance on the list. Your Excellency, sir, allow me to conclude on this note and welcome you once again to UNESCO, Africa's beacon of hope. Your visit is very much appreciated and is seen as a reinforcement of our efforts. I thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Angola. It is now my pleasure to call upon Ambassador Permanent Delegate of Nigeria, Professor Michael Abiola Amalewa, to take the floor. But in taking the floor, I want him to remember that he is the President of the General Conference of UNESCO. That is to say that he is representing here the 191 nations who are members of UNESCO. Mr. President of the General Conference.
President OBASANJO, Chairman of the African Union and President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Mr. Director General, Governors, Honorable Ministers, Ambassadors and Permanent Delegates, Prince Chief 277, UNESCO Artist for Peace, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends. Mr. President, it gives me great and special pride to be part of this august and distinguished group gathered here to receive Your Excellency at UNESCO House on this occasion of the celebration of Africa Day. When you, Mr. President, kindly honored me to represent Nigeria as the President of the 32nd session of the General Conference of UNESCO, I could not have hoped nor imagined that I would also have the singular honor of welcoming you here to UNESCO House. But I should have known better than that. For UNESCO House is very much your house, Mr. President, as witnessed by your long, varied and intense association with the organization, spread over nearly 30 years, and by your close interest in UNESCO's activities, not only as concerns Nigeria's cooperation and Africa's links with the organization, but also with regard to UNESCO's international responsibilities. Your presence here, Mr. President, today is a natural confirmation of your well-established support for the ideals of the organization, a most eloquent demonstration of your dedication to the cause of Africa, and a healthy and meaningful cooperation between Africa and UNESCO. When, at the level of your national program, you declared education as a key priority, you ordered a massive action of reform and declared your clear conviction that, and I quote you, with education, man is the subject as well as an object of change, end of quotation. You identified the common cause with UNESCO and the ensuing cooperation for progress has flourished. It continues to grow not only in the field of education, but in other areas of UNESCO's and Nigeria's interests. But your involvement with UNESCO has in no way been limited to the pursuance of Nigeria's interests. In the context of Africa's development, you have created within your administration national structures, including a ministry for integration, charged with actively working towards the achievement of Africa's integration goals. You have offered leadership through your commitment to the efficiency and relevance of regional entities such as ECOWAS. As we welcome you today, Mr. President, as the President in office of the African Union, it is relevant that you note that at the Africa continental level, you have joined hands with other eminent African leaders to work for the establishment of the new Africa, the Africa of the African Union, through which African leaders have fashioned out a progressive continental body, resolute and committed to a more meaningful future for the continent as a whole. In line with this result, you have also contributed to the establishment of the most innovative continental effort, NEPAD, created for the articulation of the needs and aspirations of African states and the presentation of plans and programs for meeting them. Today, Your Excellency is the chairman of its implementation committee. The demand for fairness for the developing countries of Africa and elsewhere has become for you a mission, and you do not relent in your persistent call for giving debt-burdened developing countries a chance to face squarely the many difficulties and challenges that stand in the way of their development through the reduction or cancellation of their debts. But as we all know, the absence of peace is in no way conducive to the flowering of stability and development. And it is in that context that we have also striven to contribute unrelentingly to the prevention of conflicts, to their resolution where they already exist, and to their management for the creation of a healthier, peaceful environment in those parts of Africa that have been sorely affected by conflicts. For you, Mr. President, every space must be turned into a laboratory for the formulation of ideas and for the pursuance of the ideals that will bring us even and ever nearer to that goal of a peaceful state of equal opportunities where man, that is humankind, is truly the center of the universe. Mr. President, by its history and action, UNESCO stands out prominently among international intergovernmental organizations wholly devoted to the development of its member states. Africa is a continuing priority in UNESCO, and the extensive cooperation that exists between the organization and all the African institutions for progress, especially the African Union, of which Your Excellency is President, have been put in place to contribute to the success of the cooperative activities linking Africa to UNESCO. As Your Excellency said in your preface to Mr. Masura's collection of speeches, Africa in UNESCO's mirror, and I quote you, "We have always considered UNESCO as a privileged partner, particularly sensitive to our development efforts." End of quotation. Your Excellency welcomed UNESCO's decision to adapt its programs to the demands of the new partnership for African development and urged us to continue to support UNESCO's action in favor of Africa, firmly buttressed in the logic of true international cooperation. Those words of yours, Mr. President, have been our guide as we have pursued the cooperation between Africa and UNESCO. They will continue to be a source of inspiration for us as Africa and UNESCO face the future together in true partnership. Thank you, Mr. President. I thank you very much for your attention, and I pray that the Almighty God will continue to be your guide. Thank you very much.
Now I have a heavy duty to how to present Mr. President. He's the President of the Republic of Nigeria. He's the President of the African Union. He's the Chairman of the Head of State Government Committee of the Implementation of the Pact. So, with your permission, allow me to speak his language and to tell him at the Apelleri of Your Excellency, the Director General of UNESCO, the President of the General Conference, the Chairman of Africa Group, Your Excellencies, governors who are members of my delegation, Your Excellencies, ambassadors, and representatives, Your Excellencies, members of the ambassadors, staff of UNESCO, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me digress a little bit at the beginning by joining the Director General to congratulate Prince 277 for his very much deserved recognition and award. I take it that you understand that to whom much is given, much will be expected. And then, so honored, much will be expected of you in the service of humanity through UNESCO. Once again, congratulations. Today, we celebrate yet another Africa Day to commemorate the unity, peace, and progress of our dear continent. I give gratitude to God for being kind to Africa and for giving us the strength and courage to engage all the contradictions and challenges that we have faced in recent times. I commend all Africans, their friends, and development partners for their resilience, partnership, vision, and belief in cooperation, dialogue, and unity. I am particularly pleased to be back here at UNESCO, an organization that has stood by and with Africa at all times and through all issues. I commend UNESCO's culture of consensus building, principled engagement with leaders and peoples, belief in dialogue and peace, support for innovation and creativity, and empowerment of peoples, communities, and constituencies. These beliefs and engagements have promoted peace in Africa and throughout the world. Let me also commend and thank the leadership and members of the Africa Group at UNESCO for their consistency and infectious enthusiasm in the celebration of Africa Day and the true spirit of African unity, cooperation, and progress. Their contributions to uplifting the image of Africa and providing support for the continent are much valued. official visit to Southeast Asia, I did take time to express Africa's sympathy with and support for the governments and peoples of that region over the recent devastating tsunami tragedy. It is my hope that the world has drawn painful lessons from that experience and that we are better educated and poised to avoid or prevent the reoccurrence of such tragedies in the future. This is equally an opportune moment to pay homage to a true son of Africa, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Kofi Annan, for his exemplary leadership, dedication to duty, commitment to democracy and development, and special attention to Africa. I do not wish to use this opportunity to bemoan the past predicaments of our continent. We are all familiar with how the contact between Africa and the outside world precipitated death and destruction, untold mystery, dislocations, distortions, contradictions, conflicts, and culminated in the underdevelopment of Africa and her marginalization in the global divisions of labor and power. Today, my intent is actually to celebrate Africa, to show that Africa is moving away from being a region of hunger, pain, misery, backwardness, and perpetual badness to a continent of opportunity, possibilities, and progress. My goal is to show that on this Africa Day 2005, Africa has a lot to be proud of, achievement to show to the world, and more importantly, that we have a sense of direction, a sense of mission, importantly, a sense of mission, and a determination to engage our problems directly. Of course, as always, and as it is with any other continent, we will continue to need the understanding and support of our friends and development partners in our quest to effectively reposition the region for peace, harmony, self-sustained growth, development, and democracy. The AU believes that 2005 is a watershed in the fight to break the debilitating cycle of poverty and conflict in Africa. Let me touch on some issues that have emerged in the global system in recent times that directly affect Africa, such as the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, the Montreal Consensus, the European Union's Everything But Arms, the renewal of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, agreed by the United States, the UN Literacy Decade, 2003 to 2012, and most recently, the UK initiative of Prime Minister Blair and the Commission for Africa. These and many other initiatives and prescriptions are aimed at helping Africa overcome her challenges. But many lack the necessary political will to generate and sustain support and thus ensure implementation. This is the challenge before the world, in particular, friends of Africa. It is no longer enough to be well-meaning. It is important that we see concrete results and that development partners adhere to their own agreements, declarations, prescriptions, and voluntary commitments to help Africa. In particular, G8 and other development partners have individual and collective responsibilities to provide the opportunity to make a real difference that will ensure a secure and prosperous world for all. It is true that Africa still has problems that constrain and indeed distort development and precipitate instability and crises. These include administrative inefficiency, corruption, waste, instability, bad governance, and bad leadership, poor resource management, misplaced priorities, low investment, low savings, technology backwardness, structural deficiencies, agricultural stagnation, institutional fragility, and general marginalization in the global system. These are not new problems, though two issues can be regarded as new. First, even in the most depressed African economy, people and leaders are increasingly aware of the depth and implications of the problem of current commitment to change. Second, to fully address most of the current development challenges facing the African continent. The initiative is based on the principles of African ownership and leadership, effective partnership with development partners, as well as participation by all sectors of society. It is intended to accelerate regional and continental integration and to build and strengthen the competitiveness of African countries and the continent. This is a new program designed by Africans, endorsed by the world, especially our development partners, and it is already making an impact on the policy landscape of Africa. The new paradigm for African development under NEPAD is that governments should provide the enabling environment to foster private sector development. This essentially involves provision of reliable physical infrastructure, an efficient and solvent financial system, a transparent legal and regulatory system with effective mechanisms for the enforcement of contracts, an effective competition policy that is conducive to the utilization of trade and investment opportunities, and simplified tax regimes to reduce the levels and multiplicity of taxes in order to encourage compliance. This is clearly a significant shift away from the past where the government dominated everything. Enhance internal linkages and the integration of African economic sectors. The continent and its development partners need to devote more attention and resources to those core areas that we have identified. Efforts should also focus on creating synergies between regional and national development strategies. Moreover, partnerships with the international community should be required to reinforce these processes. It is therefore envisaged under NEPAD that infrastructure will be developed on a planned basis and in an integrated manner. Policies that will promote best practices in private enterprises will be evolved and tailored to African needs and conditions. For African leaders, we perceive these as core challenges and will continue to pursue reform with all available resources and opportunities. To increase private capital flows and investment, priority has been accorded to a public-private sector partnership capacity building program through the African Development Bank to assist in restructuring and regulating transactions in the provision of infrastructure and social services. Our development partners are expected to complement these efforts through additional official development assistance, ODA, and debt reduction. There's also need to consider those countries that have not been included in the highly indebted poor countries, EBITs, debt relief initiatives, in order to release resources for poverty reduction. In particular, an African debt initiative will require agreed poverty reduction strategies and participation in the economic governance initiative to ensure that countries are able to absorb the extra resources. The debt overhang is a direct obstacle to growth and development, and by implication, an obstacle to democratic consolidation. This is why we must never get tired of calling for debt relief while cooperating with our development partners to take concrete action in our favor. The discipline and transparency of our reform program place us in good stead and qualify also effective use of resource flows from debt relief. In Nigeria, for instance, the new economic development and empowerment strategy needs is designed to diversify the economy, increase economic stability, reduce poverty and create jobs. Publicly owned industries are being privatized, regulated and liberalized to promote competition and efficiency. Infrastructure, particularly power generation, transportation and telecommunication, will be developed to enhance the growth of the private sector. The overall objective is to mainstream public-private partnership at all levels of government for interaction with private sector associations, NGOs, and civil society organizations. With respect to the specific roles of the public and private sectors, the reform strategies being pursued by African governments focus on redefining the role of government as a facilitator and promoter in the economy, improving security, the rule of law, and timely enforcement of contracts, reducing policy-related costs and risks, providing targeted interventions as incentive to growth in the private sector, and ensuring nationally coordinated strategies for the key sectors that drive growth, particularly agriculture, small and medium enterprises, manufacturing, oil and gas, solid minerals, tourism and services. Momentum generated by NEPAD has brought about some identifiable achievements in several sectors. According to the African Development Report of 2004 by the African Development Bank, Africa's growth rate stood at 3.7% in 2003, representing the highest for the last 4 years, which is also significantly higher than the 2.9% growth rate achieved in 2002. The continent's trade performance improved substantially, with the trade balance increasing from $6.7 billion in 2002 to $15.6 billion in 2003. The rapid expansion in agriculture has increased food and cash crop production, and this has resulted in increased foreign exchange earnings. This translates directly into better living conditions for the people. In order to give contextual and political meaning to our reforms, African leaders have voluntarily acceded to an African peer review mechanism, APRM, designed to perform a sort of collective and democratic oversight function on issues of leadership, governance, policy and programs, and accountability, and to adopt best practice from one another. This is a first of its kind in the world, and I am pleased to report that almost 30 African states have so far voluntarily acceded to the review. Our commitment to peace and conflict resolution remains very strong. In West Africa, AU working very closely with ECOWAS is moving tirelessly to bring lasting peace to the sub-region. In Sierra Leone, peace is holding, but it needs to be anchored in economic development and peace within the neighboring countries of Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire, and Guinea-Conakry. In Liberia, we are looking forward to a successful election in October. In Cote d'Ivoire, the agreement brokered under the auspices of the AU has to be closely watched and monitored to avoid pitfalls that may derail the disarmament program and election due in October. In Togo, we have been able to avoid a disguised military coup and reduce the magnitude of violence normally to be expected after 38 years of one-man rule, or if you like, misrule. We have had an election that will provide a basis for a government of national unity and reconciliation to lay the foundation for true democracy. ECOWAS, the AU, and the UN are jointly managing the situation in Guinea-Bissau. And only early this morning, one of the supposed contestants, the election in Guinea-Bissau, decided to move into the presidency, declaring himself the president. I'm happy to report that the military boys have conveniently and peacefully eased him out of the presidential lodge. We must be watchful and be proactive to manage the expected instability that may also follow a change of regime in Guinea-Conakry. We are designing an early warning system and carrying out country-based political risk analysis to strengthen our ability to deal with conflicts. More importantly, we are emphasizing dialogue, negotiation, tolerance, inclusion, the strengthening of the civil society, and more reliance on legal and political, as well as traditional and religious structures in the containment and management of conflicts. These peacemaking and stability building efforts in West Africa are in addition to ongoing efforts to fully implement the free trade zone agreements, creation of a single monetary zone, construction of a sub-regional gas pipeline and other infrastructure, and the unification of sub-region into a common custom territory and a single market. This will have the potential of opening up the whole region to genuine investors who may have been constrained by the size and depth of the economies of individual member countries of the sub-regional organization. Let me briefly touch on our peace efforts in the rest of Africa. The Democratic Republic of Congo is gradually working to eliminate warlordism and making efforts to bring the country under one effective central administration. It is a rich country that lacks basic infrastructure. The planned election this year or early next year will consolidate peace and lay the foundation for development. Sudan has overcome over 20 years of civil war in the south of the country, and we are working to ensure peace and to normalize the situation in Darfur and along the border between Chad and Sudan. We hope that by the 7th of June, the all stakeholders meeting will resume in Abuja. Rwanda has overcome the worst effects of the most shocking genocide in the modern history of Africa. It is on the path of sustainable development, and the AU continues to work with the government on outstanding border issues. Burundi is creating accommodation for its rebels, terminate conflict, and emphasize dialogue and democracy. Generally, we are working to make the Great Lakes region a zone of peace. Somalia has been able to establish a parliament and has formed a government, albeit in Kenya. Efforts have been made to assist the government to move to Mogadishu, its capital. The AU is also working to resolve the minor border issue between Eritrea and Ethiopia and build harmony between Eritrea and Sudan. The demarcation of the border between Nigeria and Cameroon is almost completed and progress is being made at reaching an amicable political resolution of pending issues and problems between the two countries. We must not forget the Sahara issue, for which we depend on the UN for a lasting solution. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are in a new Africa, an Africa of hope, hard work, democracy, and belief in collective action. This does not mean that the over 800 million and 54 nations will not have problems and challenges. It only means that we have a new sense of history, a new acquisition of global balance, a new sense of direction, a better view of constraints and challenges posed by globalization, and a deeper sense of internal unity dedicated to promoting growth, development, and democracy. While we are poised for and are making reforms, we are prepared for the required sacrifices, hard work, and patience where necessary, but we still need the support of our friends and development partners, especially in 3 areas. First, we need technical assistance with capacity development. This is needed in all sectors and should include the ability to reverse the brain and brawn drain to promote internal levels of creativity, innovation, investment, research, and development. Whatever changes we are to undertake or promote in the next decades must and should have substantial local content for it to reflect our culture, worldviews, industry, and spirituality. Here I must generally express Africa's gratitude, and in particular, I must express Nigeria's gratitude to you, the Director General, Mr. Masura of UNESCO, for your support for UNESCO's programs in Africa and indeed in Nigeria. You are a true friend of Africa, and that is why we have no hesitation or reservation in endorsing you for a second term. Second, Africa needs substantial debt. The truth is that if we are serious about development in Africa, the debt burden must be eliminated. Africa will not develop or make progress when its meager resources are frittered away on debt servicing. To put it bluntly, penalties, interest, and all sorts of questionable rescheduling arrangements are strangulating our economies and our peoples. Our creditors should deal with us with some humane consideration, compassion, and true commitment to our development objectives. We simply cannot run when our legs are bound and our hands tied behind our backs. Added to this, Africa needs the repatriation of stolen funds and acknowledgement of anti-corruption fighting efforts. Continuing reliance on old stereotypes about Africa and and refusal to release funds looted from our treasuries is unhelpful in Africa's West to reposition ourselves for good governance, stability, growth, development, and democracy. I urge our development partners to work out realistic ways in the true spirit of commitment to democracy and social justice to return funds stolen from Africa. In this connection, I must express Nigeria's disappointment and dismay with the Swiss authorities who continue to hold on to Nigeria's legitimate funds corruptly looted and kept in the Swiss banks, after necessary correct actions for repatriation have been taken by us, and even after the Swiss Supreme Court had ruled that the funds should be returned to Nigeria unconditionally. Such illegal seizure is condemned by us, and we call on all men and women of honest disposition and international goodwill to condemn such Swiss action, which is contrary to UN conventions against corruption and which undermine our anti-corruption procedure. We are a developing country that is very much in need of resources to promote pro-people developmental programs, and it is unfair, unjust, and totally unacceptable for the Swiss or any other country for that matter to adopt such improper position and postures. Third, we need improved terms of trade, especially more access to industrialized countries' market for our products. We want trade, not necessarily aid. If the terms of trade are reasonable, we can generate resources to reduce poverty and promote development. Today, our focus is not on aid, but trade, even if we still require substantial assistance, especially technical assistance in the areas of infrastructure, health, water, technology, agriculture, and education to open up new opportunities and possibilities for our people. Such investment will go a long way to unleash the energies and potentials of the continent. I would like to conclude by reiterating my conviction that deliberate supportive measures will lead to improved African economic performance, as well as create the necessary environment for a thriving and prosperous partnership between the public and private sectors of the continent, and a more vibrant, mutually beneficial relationship with our development partners. Let me assure you that our resolve to make progress is firm, our commitment is strong, our focus is clear, our dedication is undiluted, and our hopes are robust, fresh, and warm. We are ready to give all we have to ensure lasting peace, unity, love, harmony, dignity, growth, development, and democracy for all Africans. It is our hope that our development partners will transcend stereotypes, distorted perspectives, misinformation, undeserved generalization, and deliberate distortions about us. For us in Africa, we are ready to march on to a better and higher future. The question is whether our partners and friends are really ready to march in step with us. Thank you. And God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I thought we were going to listen just to a conference, but we have just got an inaugural lecture. So with your permission, allow me to call Mr. President Professor OBASANJO. And some people were saying that Africa has no father, that we don't have leaders. And the way this paper was structured and the important truth inside pushed me to sing. And for President OBASANJO, I'm going to sing in his language. And for those who can't understand Yoruba, the song is saying, who said that Africa has no father? Now it's my privilege to call upon the African or the Nigerian or no, the Pan-African Director General of UNESCO, Mr. Koichiro Masuwa.
Mr. President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Mr. President of the General Conference, Mr. President of the African Group, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. As your inspiring remarks illustrate, Mr. President, you are indeed a good friend of UNESCO, and we wholeheartedly reciprocate this feeling, recognizing the historic role you are playing in your country and in the region as a whole. Africa Day is an occasion for Africa to take pride in its achievements and to face the future with hope and confidence. This date is very symbolic for Africa, as it was on 25th May 1963 that the African Head of State brought into existence for the first time continent-wide space of unity and concentration by creating the Organization of African Unity, OAU. As a young Japanese diplomat stationed in Africa at the time, I watched the birth of the OAU with fascination and admired the African leaders for their foresight. Afterwards, I followed the subsequent development of the OAU with keen interest, and I was happy to see its evolution in 2002 into the African Union, thereby bringing African nations into a stronger framework of regional integration. Africa Day is an occasion, therefore, to celebrate Africa in all its rich diversity and as a distinctive unity. I would like to pay tribute to President OBASANJO in his many capacities as the current head of the African Union, as one of the most distinguished of Africa's leaders since he assumed power through democratic elections in 1999, as a tireless advocate for peace, security, democracy, and good governance in Africa, as one of the founding fathers of the network, and as a catalyst for improved coordination and harmonization within and between the African regional economic communities. Under my stewardship, UNESCO has worked closely and constructively with the African Union and NEPAD. This cooperation is continuing to grow in core areas of UNESCO's mandate, in education, culture, science and technology, and communication. To this end, last week we had the honor of receiving a high-level delegation of the African Union Commission, headed by its chairperson, President Honare. On this occasion, we established the basis of a new cooperation agreement, replacing the one signed with OAU many years ago, with a special emphasis on education and human resources development. This new agreement, which should be signed at the later stage, will reinforce the cooperation between our organizations. Our ongoing cooperation was evident also in last month's AU Ministers of Education meeting in Algeria, and more is in prospect, notably through the meeting of AU Ministers of Culture in Kenya in November, and the AU Summit of Heads of State to be held in Khartoum, Sudan in January 2006, when the theme of education and culture will be taken up. UNESCO has been strongly involved in these events and their preparation, and I hereby pledge that this cooperation will grow further in the future. The fields of education and culture and their interaction have rightly received particular attention, but let me say a few words about science and technology, the area that Mr. President, you also emphasized. UNESCO participated in the preparation and holding of the first NEPAD Ministerial Conference on Science and Technology that took place in Johannesburg in November 2003. In follow-up, we are putting emphasis on water resources management, early warning systems for natural disasters, and the need for science and technology policies and strategies that lead to sustainable development and the eradication of poverty. Second ministerial meeting is scheduled for next September with a view to identify additional areas of scientific knowledge that need further reinforcement of the African continent. We recognize that scientific research is an area of priority need. While there is enormous talent in Africa in this area, the lack of scientific networks, both on the continent and with other continents, is a major handicap. As a result, African scientists tend to work in isolation and are unable to benefit from the work and research of other scientists that could contribute greatly to their own endeavors. This is why I have decided to establish, thanks to a generous contribution from the Japanese government, the Mori Fellowships Scheme. These new fellowship schemes, drawing upon a fund established by the Japanese government, would enable 20 PhD candidates from Sub-Saharan Africa to finalize their scientific research at the doctoral level by spending 2 6-month visits over a period of 2 years at the Abu Salam International Center for Theoretical Physics, ICTP, in Trieste, Italy. This scheme aims at helping to create a group of promising young African scientists. Let me add here, for those who do not know, that ICTP is a UNESCO Category 1 center generously hosted and supported by the Italian government that enables the participation of scientists from developing countries in state-of-the-art research, thus helping them to overcome their relative isolation. The name of the fellowship schemes comes from former Prime Minister Yoshihiro Mori, who hosted G8 Summit in Okinawa in 2000 and made it an occasion for developing dialogue between the G8 leaders and leaders of developing countries, including 3 prominent heads of state from Africa, President Mbeki, President Bouteflika, and of course, President OBASANJO. Later this year, at the special summit on the MDG review in September in New York, there will be another opportunity for President OBASANJO to champion the cause of Africa on the world stage and to express his concerns, desires, and aspirations to its international partners. It will also be an opportunity for African nations to articulate their views concerning the proposed reform of the UN, including the important role of specialized agencies such as UNESCO. Mr. President, allow me to briefly mention the close relationship which has been developing between your country and UNESCO since your accession to the presidency of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in February 1999. I first had the pleasure to welcome you to UNESCO headquarters on 8 February 2000, soon after the adoption of the General Conference at the 30th session of Resolution 56, by which I was invited to further strengthen UNESCO's cooperation with Nigeria through the special Nigeria-UNESCO Cooperation Program. The aid memo that President OBASANJO and I signed on this occasion lays the foundation for the collaboration that subsequently took place. Later, during my visit to Nigeria in November 2002, we both reiterated, through the signature of a joint communique in Abuja, our willingness to strengthen mutual cooperation in the framework of the special plan. Good results have been obtained so far, though more can be done. Fruitful cooperation has been developed in the field of education, particularly in basic education, technical and vocational training, the development of virtual libraries in universities, and HIV/AIDS preventive education. Useful work is underway in science, particularly regarding the reform of Nigeria's science scheme, and the fruitful exchange of views I had with you will help to increase our cooperation in the area of culture, particularly in the field of tangible and intangible heritage. I hope also that given its rich and varied cultural traditions, Nigeria will be among the first countries to ratify the Convention on the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage. Today, joint communique affirms our general satisfaction with our cooperation, but at the same time points to the need for updating the plan of action. Joint Task Force Nigeria-UNESCO is being set up for this purpose, and within 3 months, we'll prepare a new plan of cooperation for approval. Mr. President, in July 2004, the Assembly of the African Union at its third ordinary session in Addis Ababa, which you chaired, unanimously adopted a decision strongly supporting my candidature for a second term as Director of UNESCO. I was immensely heartened and touched by this signal of support. I also received endorsement of the Islamic Conference of Foreign Ministers at this 2004 meeting in Istanbul, as well as support from many other member states around the world. Mr. President, if it is a wish of the member states, I shall positively respond to this African call for renewal of my term of office. As you know, the chairman of the executive board, in accordance with the statutory procedures, had written to all member states requesting them to submit candidates to the post of Director General. President Honoret had already written to him to present my nomination. I have informed the chairman of the executive board of my intentions. Thus, should the member states of UNESCO decide to provide me with continuous support and confidence and wish to elect me for second term of office, I would be delighted to continue serving the organization and to further pursue the reform process in order to make UNESCO still more relevant and effective. Let me close, Mr. President, by thanking you once again most warmly for your presence here for the celebration of Africa Day 2005, and may you and all our guests have a safe journey home. Thank you very much.
is Arigato gozaimasu. And then you see that really it is the house of cultural diversity. Mr. President, thank you for coming because we were waiting to know if the DG is going to say yes or no. The calls coming from Africa and coming from all the other continents. Because we are his friend, he was forced to tell us today that it is yes. Thank you very much. Now we know that anytime we want our DG to bring out what he is thinking deeply, we have to invite you to UNESCO. And Mr. President, we want also to say a big thank you for your coming. We know that you have many calls on your schedule, but once they say UNESCO, you are all ready to come. And then I went through your biography and I said that there should be a secret somewhere. And I discovered that before joining the army, you went briefly into teaching. So you are an educationist. And I'm not surprised that UNESCO is your cherished organization. As the Chinese proverb said, the longest journey starts with the first step. Your first step was teaching, and as head of state, as the dean of the head of state, please continue teaching us the right direction, the right way, and we will follow you. And our artists, they will be there painting all the steps you are showing us. And we are also happy that the Japanese African who has been giving priority to Africa, because there are two ways of giving priority to Africa. You can give lip service, and you can give really the words and then the deeds. Please give a hand to Mr. Masura because he is and now, Baba, you may wish to come up because we are coming to the end of this ceremony, and we are going to request you to rise when the anthem is being played, and after that you stand up when the president and his entourage will leave the hall.